Okay, so picture this. Imagine a city that's like a collision of Wall Street, Las Vegas, and maybe the Vatican, all rolled into one.
That's a good way to put it.
You're in first century Ephesus. You've got the Temple of Artemis, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, just dominating everything. It's a center of money, of power.
And anxiety. Don't forget the anxiety. I mean, this was a world full of deities, demons, spiritual forces. People were frankly terrified.
Which led to this huge underground trade in what, black magic? Amulets?
Exactly. Hexes, charms, you name it. The famous Ephesia Grammata.
And that makes it the perfect backdrop for the document we're diving into today.
Yeah.
The Epistle to the Ephesians.
It really is a fascinating text. A lot of scholars call it the crown jewel of the New Testament letters.
Why is that?
Because it gives this incredibly high-level, almost cosmic view of what Christianity is all about. It's less about putting out fires and more about, laying out the grand vision.
That's a great point, because when you read a letter like Corinthians, it feels like Paul is just running around solving problems.
Right. Stop doing this, start doing that.
But Ephesians feels smoother, grand. And there's a reason for that, isn't there?
There is, and it's a huge clue. If you look at our oldest and best manuscripts, like one called P46 from around the year 200, the words in Ephesus actually aren't there in the first verse.
Wait, really? So it just says, to the saints who are blank.
Exactly. To the saints who are and are faithful in Christ Jesus, which leads a lot of scholars to believe this was a circular letter.
So not a direct message to one church, but more like a corporate memo for the whole region.
That's the idea. It was probably passed around between Ephesus, Laodicea, Colossae. That's why it feels so impersonal. I mean, Paul lived in Ephesus for 3 years. He would have known everyone by name.
But if it's a manifesto for the whole region, the tone makes perfect sense.
Precisely. And the mission of the letter is huge. It's split right down the middle. Chapters 1 to 3 are all theology. It's your identity.
4 to 6.
That's the ethics, the activity. It's all about what you do with that identity. You have to know who you are before you can know what to do.
Okay, so give us the quick flyover of that first half. What is that identity?
The core idea is kind of like The Walking Dead. The author says humanity is dead in trespasses. Not just sick or struggling, dead.
Grim.
Very. But then you get the famous "but God" moment in chapter 2. They're made alive. And this isn't just about individuals getting a ticket to heaven. This is sociological.
It's about tearing down walls, right?
Right. The mystery he keeps talking about isn't a whodunit. A mysterion in Greek is a secret that's finally been revealed. And the secret is that the dividing wall between Jew and Gentile, the biggest cultural hatred of the ancient world, is gone.
So your primary identity is no longer your race or your class. You're part of this new thing, a new humanity.
A third race, as some early Christians called it. And you absolutely have to get that foundation to understand the second half of the letter.
Well, let's pivot there then, specifically to chapter 5, because that's where the rubber really meets the road. The key word in that transition is walk.
Yes. Walk worthy of the calling. It's the shift from your position to your practice. If you are this new person, you can't live like the old one.
And chapter 5 opens with a command that honestly sounds impossible. It says, be imitators of God.
I know. It's the highest standard you can imagine. But look at the context. And walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. The text immediately sets up this stark choice.
It's the old humanity versus the new.
Exactly. The old is all about greed, sexual immorality, and what the text calls crude joking.
That crude joking part in verse 4 really stood out to me.
Yeah.
It feels very specific. No filthiness, nor foolish talk, nor crude joking.
It is specific. The Greek word there suggests a kind of witty banter that's used to tear people down, or, double entendres that trivialize sacred things. It's the language of a cynical, grasping culture.
And the author says that kind of talk shouldn't even be named among them.
And the opposite of all that grasping and crude talk is Thanksgiving.
Wait, Thanksgiving? You'd think it would be something like serious holy silence.
It's surprising, isn't it? But it makes sense. The old humanity is defined by what it wants to get greed, which he calls idolatry. The new humanity is defined by gratitude for what it's been given.
A culture of grasping versus a culture of giving thanks.
That's it. And this leads to this beautiful little poem, which scholars think was an early Christian hymn. Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.
It's a wake-up call.
Literally, he's saying, you aren't zombies anymore, so stop walking like you're dead. And then he gives the primary evidence of being filled with the Spirit. And again, It's not what you might expect. It's not just miracles.
It's singing.
It's singing, addressing one another in psalms and hymns. It's a shared joy that just spills over. But then the text flows right from that joyful singing into probably the most controversial part of the whole letter.
The household codes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to slow down here.
You good?
Because when modern readers hit verse 22, wives, submit to your husbands, I think the brakes just screech. It sounds like the text is just reinforcing ancient misogyny.
It really does, to our ears. But to understand what's actually going on, you have to look at the verse right before it. Verse 21.
The sources call this the hinge verse.
Yes. Submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. Mutual submission.
So that's the headline for this whole section.
It's way more than a headline. And this is a really important technical point that gets lost in translation. In the original Greek, the verb submit does not exist in verse 22.
What? Hang on. Every English Bible says wives submit.
They added in for clarity, but the Greek literally reads, verse 21, submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. Verse 22, wives, to your own husbands as to the Lord.
So the command for wives to submit is grammatically dependent on the command for everyone to submit to everyone.
Exactly. You cannot read the instruction to wives on its own. It's a subset of mutual submission. And you have to understand how utterly radical that was in a Roman context.
Right. Let's talk about that Roman reality, the Paterfamilias.
The Roman household was a dictatorship. Full stop. The male head of the house, the Paterfamilias, held what was called patria potestas.
Absolute power.
Absolute. He could legally decide if a newborn baby lived or died. He could sell his own children into slavery. His wife was, for all intents and purposes, his property.
So when the author writes a household code, he's not inventing something new. He's tapping into a known format.
Right. Aristotle wrote household codes. It was like a best practices list for running a proper Greco-Roman home. But what the author of Ephesians does is a kind of Christian remix. He keeps the outer structure because calling for social revolution would get the church crushed by Rome.
But he completely guts it from the inside.
He hollows it out and fills it with a new motivation.
Okay, so let's look at the husbands then. The culture says, rule your wife. What does this letter say?
It never once tells a husband to rule. Not once. It tells him to love.
But love can be a soft word, right? People
Yeah.
can say, oh, I love her. That's why I make all her decisions for her.
But not this kind of love. The text defines it with razor-sharp precision in verse 25. As Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her.
It's a command to die.
It's a command to self-sacrifice. He's telling the Roman man, the king of his castle, that his job is to die for his subjects. It completely flips the pyramid of power upside down.
He's using his authority to serve, not to be served.
Yes. He's told to love his wife as his own body, which reframes her from being his property to being part of his own self. He who loves his wife loves himself.
And there's a deeper theological point, too. The mystery comes back.
It does. In verse 32, he says this whole marriage dynamic isn't just a social contract. It's a living, breathing metaphor of the gospel. It's a picture of Christ and the church.
So the wife's role, as to the Lord, isn't about her being inferior. It's her voluntary participation in this gospel drama.
Right. She's not submitting because Rome says she's property.
Yeah.
She's doing it as a free moral agent, as an act of worship. It restores her agency.
And it continues down the list. Children obey, which is standard. But the instruction to fathers, do not provoke your children to anger.
That feels like a direct shot at that patria potestas.
It's huge check on that absolute power. A Roman father did not have to care about his child's emotional state. This letter gives children emotional rights. It tells the father he can't just crush his kid's spirits. And then we get to the hardest one. Slaves and masters. This is where so many people today struggle with the New Testament. Why doesn't he just say, slavery is evil, stop it?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And we have to remember slavery was the economic engine of the entire Roman Empire. For a tiny, fringe religious sect to call for abolition would have been seen as insurrection. It would have meant mass slaughter.
So instead of a political revolt, it's more like social sabotage.
Sabotage is the perfect word. Look at chapter 6, verse 9. He tells the masters to do the same to their slaves.
Do the same, meaning serve their slaves.
Serve them. Treat them with the same respect and sincerity the slaves are supposed to show them. And then comes the knockout blow. Stop threatening.
Wow. If you take away a master's right to threaten, do you even have Roman-style slavery anymore?
Not really. The entire system ran on fear. And then he says, remember, you both have the same master in heaven, and he shows no partiality.
That's the great equalizer. Says a slave and a master have the exact same status before God.
It makes the master-slave relationship theologically impossible to maintain. While it doesn't legally abolish slavery on the spot, it plants a time bomb right in the foundation of the institution.
Which brings us full circle, back to the city of Ephesus. We started with magic and anxiety. The letter ends with the famous passage about the armor of God.
And you just can't understand the armor without understanding that magic context.
Right, the sources mention that wild story from the book of Acts about the sons of Sceva.
Oh, it's like a dark comedy. These Jewish exorcists try to use Jesus' name like a magic password. I command you by the Jesus that Paul preaches.
And the demon basically says, Jesus I know, Paul I know, but who are you? And then beats them up.
Strips them naked and beats them senseless. It showed everyone in Ephesus that spiritual power was real and not something to be trifled with. And it triggered a huge revival.
People started burning their magic scrolls.
In a massive public bonfire. The text says they were worth 50,000 pieces of silver.
Which, what is that today?
Some estimates put it around $6 million. Think about that. Burning millions of dollars worth of what you thought was your spiritual protection.
But that would create a vacuum, right? If I burn my protective amulets, what protects me now?
That is precisely why the Armor of God section is in this letter. It's replacing their old magic technology with new spiritual technology. You don't need a spell, you have the belt of truth. You don't need a charm, you have the breastplate of righteousness.
And the shield of faith. The text says it extinguishes the flaming darts of the evil one.
And that was a real combat tactic. Roman archers would dip arrows in pitch, light them on fire.
The goal wasn't just to wound you, it was to set your wooden shield on fire so you'd panic, drop it, and then they'd hit you with the kill shot.
It's a perfect psychological metaphor. The enemy throws these accusations, these temptations, these lies, flaming arrows designed to make you panic and drop your guard. And faith is what allows you to stand firm in your identity.
So when we step back and look at the whole letter, the new identity, the subversive household, the spiritual armor, what's the big takeaway here?
I think the key insight is that Ephesians is a manifesto for a society within a society.
A politia, a new commonwealth.
Yes. The Christians weren't trying to overthrow Rome, they were trying to build a counterculture within it, one that operated on a completely different power source.
It's apologetics plus transformation. We're not anarchists, but we are revolutionary.
Exactly. They replaced the Roman drive for dominance with the Christian ethic of mutual submission. They replaced the fear of demons with confidence in God.
It's about exposing the darkness, not just by shouting at it, but just by being different, by being light.
That's verse 5.13. When anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. Sometimes you just have to turn on the light.
Which leads to the final question for us today. The sources suggest Paul Christianized the most rigid structures of his day patriarchy, slavery, by injecting them with this virus of self-sacrificial love.
He kept the form, but completely changed the fuel.
So here's a thought to end on. If the author of Ephesians were writing to the church in the 21st century, what modern structures would he be telling us to subvert from the inside?
That's the uncomfortable question, isn't it? What are the rigid power dynamics in our corporate hierarchies, our political systems, our economic models?
Where do we need to inject mutual submission and sacrificial love today?
Is it in our online discourse? Is it how we treat people in the gig economy?
Something to chew on. Go back and read Ephesians, but start with verse 5.21 and just see how it changes everything that follows. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
See you next time.